The courthouse steps looked the same weeks later, same stone. Same columns. Same echo of footsteps moving in and out of power. To anyone passing by, nothing about the place suggested it had been the center of a reckoning. That was how reform often worked: quiet. Structural. Permanent. The woman paused briefly at the bottom of the steps one morning, not because she was stopped, but because she chose to be. She watched officers greet people as they entered, measured, professional, careful. She watched them ask questions instead of issuing commands. She watched them listen. No one recognized her now. That, too, was the point. Inside, proceedings continued as they always had. Cases were argued. Motions were filed. Judges ruled. Justice moved forward not with spectacle, but with consistency. What had changed lived beneath the surface. A generation of officers now trained on a video they could not forget. A department that had learned, publicly, what unchecked confidence could cost. Procedures rewritten not out of apology, but necessity. The system had corrected itself the only way it ever truly does. By being forced to look, the officer who once stood laughing on those steps faded from public memory. Not erased. Documented. His name remained in reports, in training materials, in disciplinary records that would follow him wherever he tried to rebuild. There was no dramatic ending for him, just consequences, and that was enough. For the woman, there were no interviews. No statements. No victory laps. She declined every request to speak publicly about what happened. Not because she was afraid of attention, but because attention was never the goal. Accountability was. Those who needed the lesson had already received it. The footage still circulated, resurfacing from time to time, often shared quietly, accompanied by simple captions. No commentary. No outrage, just evidence, and each time it was watched, the same truth landed again. Power does not announce itself. It does not shout. It does not need to humiliate to be effective. True authority waits. It follows process. It survives scrutiny, and when challenged, it doesn't panic. The people who watched the incident unfold, those who recorded, who spoke up, who didn't look away, carried something with them too. A reminder that systems respond when witnesses stay present. That silence protects abuse far more than noise ever could. Justice, they learned, is not always immediate, but it is cumulative. Every documented moment adds weight, every calm refusal to be diminished adds pressure, every exposure forces correction. This story was never about one officer. It was about a system tested in public, and found wanting, then forced to improve. If there is a lesson here, it isn't dramatic. It's practical. Authority should always be accountable, credentials should be verified, not mocked, and dignity should never depend on who is watching, because someday, everyone is. The officer keyed his radio slowly, deliberately, making sure the motion was seen. Dispatch, he said, voice casual, almost bored. I've got a non-compliant individual at the courthouse entrance. Refusing to follow instructions. The woman's eyes flicked briefly to the radio, then back to his face. Still calm. Still controlled. I am not refusing, she said. I am asserting my right to enter a public building for official business. He shook his head, as if disappointed by her persistence. See, that's the problem, he replied. You keep using words like that. Makes people think they're special. Behind them, the crowd thickened. Someone stopped recording and started a live stream. Another person whispered into a phone, giving directions as if guiding an unseen audience. The younger officer shifted again, glancing toward the courthouse doors, then back at his partner. He cleared his throat. Hey, he said quietly. Maybe we should just. The senior officer cut him off with a sharp look. I've got it, he said. He turned back to the woman. You don't get to decide how this goes, he said. I do. The woman's grip tightened slightly on her folder. Not in fear. In restraint. I've already informed you who I am, she said. And why I'm here. He snorted. No, he said. You told me who you think you are. A murmur rippled through the onlookers. A middle-aged man in a suit frowned openly now. A woman near the steps shook her head, lips pressed tight. The officer noticed none of it. Let's try this again, he said, stepping closer. You wait until I say you can go in. Or we can make this more complicated. Her voice lowered. Threats won't change the facts. That did it. His jaw tightened. He reached out and tapped the edge of her folder with one finger. You're about one bad decision away from being escorted off these steps, he said. And trust me, that won't look good for you. The word escorted hung in the air, heavy with implication. The woman looked past him then, toward the courthouse doors. Toward the seal carved into the stone above them. Toward a place she had walked into countless times without incident. I don't want a scene, she said quietly. He smiled thinly. Funny, he replied. That makes one of us. A courthouse clerk paused halfway down the steps, uncertainty written across her face. She glanced at the officer, then at the woman, then quickly looked away and continued down, choosing distance over involvement. The officer lifted his voice slightly now, projecting authority. Ma'am, I'm giving you a lawful order, he said. Step back. Several phones were fully raised now. No one tried to hide it anymore. The woman did not move. Instead, she reached into her bag again, slower this time, and pulled out her phone. She didn't dial immediately. She simply held it, screen dark, as if weighing something. The officer laughed. Oh, now you're calling someone, he said. Let me guess. A lawyer? She met his gaze. Yes, she said. Among others. He leaned in, lowering his voice again. Call whoever you want, he said. By the time they get here, this'll be over. Her phone vibrated again. This time, she looked at the screen. Her expression didn't change, but something in the air did. The crowd felt it before the officer did. The tension sharpened. The moment stretched, and somewhere inside the building, doors began to open. The officer stepped directly in front of her now, fully blocking the entrance. From a distance, it looked procedural. A uniform doing his job. A civilian being difficult. That was the illusion he relied on, the same one that had protected him countless times before. Up close, it was something else entirely. You're creating a disruption, he said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. Courthouse security issue. The word security carried weight. It always did. I am not a threat, the woman replied. Her voice remained steady, but there was a quiet firmness now, a line drawn without raising it. And you know that. He ignored that. Instead, he turned slightly toward the younger officer. Start a log, he said. Refusal to comply. Possible impersonation. The younger officer hesitated. Impersonation of what? The senior officer didn't answer him. He kept his eyes on the woman. You don't get to claim authority you don't have, he said. That's a serious matter. A ripple of disbelief passed through the onlookers. Someone muttered, this is ridiculous. Another voice whispered, she showed him ID. The officer heard none of it, or pretended not to. Step back, he repeated. Now. The woman inhaled slowly, then exhaled. This is not how the law works, she said. And you know that too. His lips curled. You keep saying that, he replied. But here's the thing, out here, right now, I am the law. The sentence landed heavily. Several people shifted uncomfortably. A man near the edge of the crowd lowered his phone, shaking his head in disbelief before lifting it again. The officer reached for the woman's arm. Not a grab. Not yet, just a touch. 2 fingers pressing lightly, testing compliance, asserting control. She pulled her arm back instantly. Do not touch me, she said, her voice cut through the noise. Clear. Sharp. Final. The officer's eyes darkened. There it is, he said. Resisting. I am not resisting, she replied. You are escalating. He raised his voice deliberately, projecting toward the steps, toward the cameras, toward anyone who might later review the footage without context. Ma'am, you are interfering with courthouse operations, he announced. If you do not comply, you will be detained. The word detained hit the crowd like a spark. A woman gasped. Someone else cursed under their breath. The younger officer shifted again, clearly uneasy now. Sarge, he said quietly. This feels unnecessary. The senior officer shot him a look sharp enough to silence him instantly. "Stand by," he snapped. He turned back to the woman, lowering his voice, but not his menace. "You had your chance," he said. "Now you're going to learn something." The woman's phone vibrated again in her hand. She looked at the screen briefly, then locked it without answering. "You're making a mistake," she said. He laughed. "That's what everyone says," he replied. Right before they realize they're wrong. He reached for his cuffs. That was the moment the crowd fully reacted. "Hey," someone shouted. "What are you doing? Leave her alone. She didn't do anything." The officer ignored them all. The noise only hardened his resolve. In his mind, this had become a test of authority, and he had never lost those. He took the woman's wrist firmly now, not violently. Not roughly, firm enough to leave no doubt who was in control. "This is happening," he said. The woman did not struggle. She did not raise her voice. She did not plead. Instead, she looked directly at him. "When this is reviewed," she said calmly, "everything you're doing will be seen." He smirked. "By who?" he asked. "Your friends?" She didn't answer. He guided her one step back from the entrance, just enough to establish physical dominance. The cuffs dangled visibly from his hand now, a silent threat amplified by the cameras capturing every second. "Turn around," he ordered. The younger officer swallowed hard. "Sarge, turn around." The woman did not comply, not out of defiance, out of certainty. "I will not," she said. "And I am formally requesting your supervisor." The officer's smile vanished. "Request denied," he said instantly. "You don't get to make requests anymore." A courthouse door opened behind them. A suited official stepped out, paused, and froze at the scene unfolding. The officer noticed, and quickly repositioned himself, angling his body to block the official's view of the woman's face, keeping the narrative firmly in his control. "Everything's under control," he called out without turning. "Just handling a situation." The official hesitated, then retreated inside. The crowd erupted in disbelief. "That's abuse," someone yelled. "This is insane." The officer tightened his grip just slightly. "This could have been easy," he said quietly to the woman. "You chose hard." Her eyes never left his. "No," she said. "You did." And somewhere, deep inside the building, a call was being answered. The radio on the officer's shoulder crackled. At first, it was just static, brief, ignorable. He didn't react. He was focused on the moment, on maintaining control, on the quiet satisfaction of dominance he believed he still held. Then a voice cut through. "Unit 12, dispatch said. Confirm location." He pressed the button without looking away from the woman. Courthouse entrance. Ongoing situation. There was a pause. Longer than usual. The woman felt it. The crowd felt it. Even the younger officer stiffened slightly, sensing a shift before understanding it. "Unit 12, dispatch came back, slower now. Stand by." The officer frowned. Dispatch never said stand by unless something upstream had changed. He released the radio and tightened his grip instead. The woman spoke again, her tone unchanged, but the weight behind it unmistakable now. "I told you," she said. "This would be reviewed." He scoffed, but the sound lacked conviction. "Everyone's a lawyer after the fact," he replied. Another voice broke in, this time from behind them. "Officer." He turned sharply. A man in a tailored suit stood at the top of the courthouse steps. Not security. Not staff. His posture was rigid, his expression unreadable. "I need you to release her," the man said. The officer bristled. "Sir, this is an active situation." The man didn't raise his voice. "I'm aware." The woman finally turned her head slightly, acknowledging the man with a brief nod. Nothing more. The officer noticed it, and something cold slid into his stomach. "Who are you?" he demanded. The man took a measured step forward. "I'm with the Office of the Attorney General." The crowd reacted instantly. Gasps. Whispers. Phones adjusted, zoomed in. The officer laughed reflexively, a defensive sound. "Then you should know better than to interfere." The man's eyes hardened. "I'm not interfering." I'm informing you. He gestured subtly toward the woman. That individual, he said, is protected under my office's authority. The officer shook his head. I don't see any protection detail. I don't see, you won't, the man interrupted calmly. Because she doesn't need one. The woman finally spoke again. Officer, she said, this is your last opportunity to disengage. Her words landed differently now. Not as a challenge. As a warning. The officer's radio crackled again. Unit 12, dispatch said, voice tight. We need you to confirm the name of the individual you are detaining. His pulse spiked. He hesitated, just for a second. The younger officer leaned closer. Sarge, maybe we should, quiet, he snapped. He looked at the woman, then at the suited man, then at the growing crowd. The illusion was cracking, and he felt it. I don't have to justify myself to dispatch, he said, pressing the radio anyway. She's refusing lawful orders. Silence. Then dispatch responded, unmistakably tense. Unit 12, the voice said. The individual you are detaining is confirmed as the daughter of the United States Attorney General. The world stopped. The officer's face drained of color so fast it was visible even from a distance. His hand loosened involuntarily on the woman's wrist. The crowd exploded, shouts, gasps, disbelief colliding into noise. The younger officer took an involuntary step back. The suited man spoke again, each word precise. She is also a senior federal prosecutor, he added. And she is scheduled to appear before a federal judge inside that building. Right now. The officer opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The woman turned fully to face him now. Her composure hadn't changed. But her presence had. You mocked my authority, she said quietly. You dismissed my identification. You escalated without cause. She glanced at the cuffs in his hand. And you did all of it on camera. The officer's hand trembled. I didn't know, he stammered. She nodded once. That much is clear. The suited man raised his phone. Internal Affairs has already been notified, he said. So has the Department of Justice. The officer's radio crackled again, relentless now. Unit 12, dispatch said. Supervisor en route. Do not make further contact. Do not make further contact. The words echoed in his ears. Slowly, visibly, he stepped back. He released her wrist completely. The woman straightened her blazer, smoothing the fabric where his hand had been. A small, human gesture that somehow carried more power than any badge. I asked for your supervisor, she said. You denied me. She looked past him, toward the cameras, the witnesses, the open courthouse doors. Now, she continued, I'll wait. The officer stood frozen, exposed. His authority evaporated in real time, and for the first time that morning, he understood exactly how alone he was. The supervisor arrived without sirens. That, more than anything else, signaled how serious the situation had become. A dark sedan pulled up along the curb. The doors opened calmly. Two senior officers stepped out, followed closely by a man in a suit carrying a slim leather portfolio. None of them rushed. None of them raised their voices. Authority no longer needed to be loud. The crowd parted instinctively. The senior officer, gray at the temples, posture rigid with experience, took in the scene in seconds. The phones. The suited official from the Attorney General's office. The woman standing untouched now, composed, waiting. Then his eyes landed on Unit 12. What happened? The supervisor asked. The officer opened his mouth again. Nothing came. The younger officer spoke instead, his voice tight. Sir, she presented ID. Requested entry. Asked for a supervisor. The supervisor's jaw clenched. And you denied that request, he asked. Unit 12 nodded, barely. The suited man stepped forward, offering his portfolio. This will help, he said evenly. The supervisor accepted it, flipped it open, and read. His expression shifted, not to anger, not yet, but to something heavier. Recognition. Gravity. He closed the portfolio and looked directly at Unit 12. Remove your cuffs, he said. The officer hesitated. I said remove them. His hands fumbled as he unclipped the cuffs from his belt. the metal clicking louder than it should have. He held them awkwardly, unsure what to do with them now that they no longer meant power. "Step away from her," the supervisor said. Unit 12 complied, retreating 2 full steps. The physical distance felt enormous. The supervisor turned to the woman. "Ma'am," he said, measured and formal. "I apologize for what occurred here." She nodded once. "Noted." He glanced at the crowd, then back to her. "Would you like medical attention? Or to proceed inside?" "I would like this documented," she replied. "Fully." "It already is," the suited man said quietly, gesturing toward the phones, the live stream still running, the witnesses who had not left. The supervisor exhaled slowly. "Officer," he said, turning back to Unit 12, "you are relieved of duty effective immediately." The words landed with finality. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "He's done." Unit 12's face flushed, then paled. "Sir, I was just..." "Stop," the supervisor said. "You will not justify this here." He signaled to another officer. "Escort him to the vehicle." As Unit 12 was guided away, not arrested, but stripped of authority, his eyes darted around wildly, searching for support that wasn't there. The crowd that had once felt like an audience now felt like a jury. The woman watched without expression. Inside the courthouse, proceedings paused. A federal judge was informed. Court officers stepped into the hallway. Whispers moved fast, carried by marble walls and professional curiosity. By the time the woman entered, the building already knew. She walked past security without incident this time. No questions. No delay. Inside a conference room, doors closed, the suited man from the Attorney General's office sat across from her. "Internal Affairs will begin formal interviews within the hour," he said. "The footage is already being preserved." She nodded. "Good." Outside, consequences multiplied. By midday, the video had spread beyond local feeds. Headlines followed, not sensational, but damning. Officer detains federal prosecutor outside courthouse. Authority questioned, then reversed. The department issued a statement. Carefully worded. Incomplete. By evening, that statement was challenged. Witness accounts contradicted it. Footage filled the gaps. The narrative collapsed under its own weight. Internal Affairs suspended Unit 12 pending investigation. Then placed him on administrative leave. Then escalated. By the end of the week, his name was no longer listed on active duty. The younger officer was reassigned, temporarily, then permanently, after giving a full statement. He would carry that morning with him for the rest of his career. The supervisor filed his report. It was thorough. Unforgiving, and the woman, she never spoke publicly about it. She didn't need to. The system was speaking for her now. The fallout did not end with a suspension. It never does when the record is this clear. Within days, the department announced a formal review of courthouse policing procedures. Not quietly. Not internally. The announcement was public, deliberate, and unmistakably reactive. Language that once lived only in internal memos now appeared in press briefings and official statements. Accountability had a schedule. Internal Affairs expanded the scope of its investigation. What began as a single incident became a pattern review. Body camera footage from previous courthouse assignments was pulled. Complaints once dismissed as unsubstantiated were re-examined. Time stamps were matched. Audio was replayed. Context was restored. The officer's history told a story no one had bothered to finish reading before. Repeated citizen complaints. Notes about attitude. Supervisor comments about needs improvement with discretion. Nothing that had once seemed severe enough to act on, until it was viewed together. That was the point. The department's legal counsel advised immediate policy revisions. Supervisors were instructed, explicitly, that denial of a requested supervisor would now require written justification within the same shift. Failure to comply would trigger automatic review. Courthouse duty protocols were rewritten. Plainclothes authority recognition procedures were clarified. Government-issued identification was no longer discretionary to acknowledge. Officers were required to verify, not dismiss. To confirm, not mock, training schedules changed, mandatory de-escalation refreshers were added, not theoretical, but scenario-based, built from real footage. Including this footage. The courthouse steps. The crowd. The cuffs never closed, but never needed to. In roll call rooms across the department, officers watched in silence. No narration. No commentary, just the video, the pause before the radio call, the laugh, the moment authority shifted, and never came back. Some officers crossed their arms defensively. Others looked away. A few sat perfectly still, understanding exactly how close they had come to being in the same position. On a different morning, with a different person, the department announced the creation of a courthouse oversight liaison, an independent role tasked with reviewing all incidents involving access denial, detainment near judicial facilities, and citizen complaints tied to perceived authority disputes. The phrasing was careful, the intent was not outside the department. The response widened. Civil rights organizations cited the incident in formal letters demanding transparency. Not outrage. Documentation. Data. Follow-through. Lawmakers requested briefings, judges quietly supported the reforms, some more openly than others. No judge wanted their courtroom preceded by abuse on the steps outside, and above it all, the Department of Justice monitored, not intervening, watching. The officer at the center of it all was offered due process. Exactly as the system promised. Exactly as it was supposed to work. His disciplinary hearing lasted less than an hour. The findings were clear: misuse of authority, failure to follow protocol, improper detention attempt, conduct unbecoming. The recommendation was unanimous: termination. The notice was delivered without ceremony. No cameras. No crowd. No crowd control. Just paperwork. The department released a final statement weeks later. It acknowledged failure. Not in emotional terms. In procedural ones. The most damaging kind: policy failure. Supervisory oversight failure. Cultural complacency. The reforms were codified, they did not erase what happened, they ensured it would be harder to repeat. At the courthouse, something subtle changed. Officers spoke more carefully. Asked before commanded. Verified instead of assuming. Cameras stayed on. Radio stayed open. Authority was still present, but it had learned restraint, and the woman whose calm had triggered it all, she returned to that courthouse again and again, unremarkable in her passage now. No stares. No delays. No questions. The system adjusted around her, not because of her name, but because of what the exposure demanded. Justice had not been loud. It had been precise, and it had rewritten the rules. The courthouse steps were already crowded when the patrol car rolled to a stop. Morning light bounced off marble columns, the kind polished by decades of authority and tradition. Lawyers moved with practiced urgency. Clerks balanced files against their chests. A few reporters lingered near the entrance, waiting for something, anything, that might turn routine into spectacle. That was when the officer laughed. It wasn't loud at first. Just a short, dismissive sound, sharp enough to cut through the air but quiet enough that he thought no one important would hear it. He leaned against the hood of his cruiser, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the woman standing a few feet away from him. She was calm. Too calm for someone being publicly questioned. She wore a dark blazer over a simple blouse, no visible badge, no uniform, no obvious symbols of rank. Her posture was straight, composed, her hands relaxed at her sides. She held a leather folder, worn at the edges, the kind used by people who spend their lives inside courtrooms rather than outside of them. The officer tilted his head, a smirk spreading across his face. "Ma'am," he said, drawing the word out slowly, "you can't just walk in here acting like you run the place." A few heads turned. The woman met his eyes without flinching. Her expression didn't change. No anger. No fear. Just a steady, measured patience. "I'm not acting," she replied. Her voice was even, controlled. "I'm here on official business." The officer chuckled again, louder this time. He looked around, seeking silent agreement from a second officer nearby. a younger one who shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Official business, the officer repeated, amused. Everyone's got official business these days. He stepped closer, invading her space just enough to assert dominance. The badge on his chest caught the light as he leaned in. You got ID? He asked. She nodded once and reached into her bag, slowly, deliberately. She handed him a government-issued identification card. He glanced at it for less than a second before handing it back, barely pretending to read it. This doesn't mean what you think it means, he said. And it definitely doesn't mean you get to talk down to me. The woman didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She simply said, I'm not talking down to you. Behind them, a phone camera lifted slightly higher. Then another. Someone near the courthouse doors paused mid-step, sensing tension where there shouldn't have been any. The officer scoffed. You people always think you've got some kind of pull, he said. Name dropping. Paper flashing. Acting important. Her eyes narrowed, just a fraction. I haven't named anyone, she said. That seemed to irritate him more. He straightened, squaring his shoulders. Then let me make this clear, he said, his tone hardening. Until I say otherwise, you wait. Right here. And you don't move. She took a slow breath. I'm scheduled to be inside, she said. Now. The officer laughed openly this time, the sound echoing off the stone walls. You hear that? He called out to no one in particular. She's scheduled. A few people nearby looked away, uncomfortable. Others watched more closely now. The balance had shifted. What should have been a forgettable exchange was becoming something else. The woman remained still, her dignity intact despite the spectacle forming around her. I don't want this to become an issue, she said. The officer leaned forward, lowering his voice, his smile gone. It already is, he replied. And you're the one making it one. A courthouse security guard glanced over but didn't intervene. This wasn't his jurisdiction. The officer knew it. He always did. The woman's phone vibrated softly in her hand. She ignored it. Last warning, the officer said. Step back from the entrance. She didn't move. For a brief moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then the officer reached for his radio. That was when the first whisper moved through the crowd, not loud enough to stop him, but enough to matter later. That's not just anyone. The officer didn't hear it. He was too busy assuming he was in control.